What is up, sports fans? What is up, Seattle Mariners fans? Welcome on into another episode of Bleav In Mariners. Lots to break down, but I got one big question here on this episode of Bleav In Mariners. Is Mariners infielder Donovan Solano washed? We're going to get to that. That's our main topic of the podcast, but a couple more Jekyll and Hyde days as a Seattle Mariners fan since the last episode. Pretty crappy loss to open the series in Cincinnati. Looked like they were going to get going off to a pretty good start there. Game one against the Reds out of a 9-game total road trip, 3 games total in Cincinnati. Had a 4-2 lead before Luis Castillo gave it up in the 5th. And I'll tell you what, Dan Wilson just looked absolutely sick going to get Luis Castillo. I mean, he looked like he was about to vomit going out to the mound in the 5th after Castillo gave that up. And we saw a little bit of that last season. So, not surprised. Once again, I've said it a couple of times here on Bleav In Mariners. Starting pitchers here for Seattle, they've had a lot put on their backs. So I'm not surprised when they have maybe early inning struggles like they did last week when they were back in Seattle, or, for instance, Luis giving this up in the 5th inning against a Reds team that just got a lot of guys back and a lot of freshly healthy players. Didn't really get to start the season on the opening day roster like the rest of their team, and they're excited to get going and they're feeling good. So sometimes you just kind of run into that. Doesn't really concern me as much, but I'll tell you what, nice to see after that Cal Raleigh homering a couple of times. Bryce Miller pitching an absolute gem in the Wednesday game as I'm taping this episode. Finished off with 8 strikeouts. What a day for Bryce Miller, and 2 home runs for Cal Raleigh, up to 7. And as we tape this, 2nd place in baseball in home runs. Man, he is showing off that glove as well. A great play, getting a runner up the line basically on what was a swinging bunt in that 2nd game against the Reds too. So Cal Raleigh kind of making it a much better day for the Mariners overall on Wednesday. Hopefully they can keep that going into Thursday. It'd be nice to see a series win to start off this 9-game road trip for the Seattle Mariners. So a lot of good things to focus on. Unfortunately, the Mariners did send down Gregory Santos after he gave up a couple of runs late in that loss to Cincinnati after Luis Castillo had already kind of given it up. I mean, yeah, it's obviously not his job to get the Mariners a win, but you got to hold the runners, right? You got to hold the Reds to the total that they already had at 6, and you screwed that up. You gave up a couple more runs. You walked 3, I believe. Just, the high-powered pitcher that can't really strike guys out, not necessarily going to have much value for a major league bullpen. So, unfortunately for Santos, sent down. Will Klein called up in his stead. Of course, the Mariners are still eagerly awaiting with Will Klein and Casey Legumina sitting in the bullpen, kind of just filling in, waiting for the return of Matt Brash. And also nice to see Troy Taylor back in. He pitched in Wednesday's game as well. So, yeah, once you see Taylor kind of settling in, once you see Brash getting back for the Mariners, thankfully that bullpen going to be much more short up than it was at the beginning of the season. And then, gosh, man, looks like Emerson Hancock's going to be starting later on in the week against the Toronto Blue Jays again. Cross our fingers, Mariners fans, right? We still don't really know what's happening as far as George Kirby coming back, basically getting stretched out, I believe, is the last thing that we've heard from Mariners staff or any Mariners reporters, that Kirby's getting stretched out. So we need him, and we need him now. Don't want to see any more Pebble starts. And frankly, I don't want to see any more Emerson Hancock starts for the Mariners either, especially as they're juggling the bullpen basically as much as they're juggling these starting pitchers. But once again, great win on Wednesday after a pretty crappy loss on Tuesday. One of those things that happened in the crappy loss on Tuesday that stuck out to me, I really wanted to talk about here on this episode of Bleav In Mariners, and that is, drum roll please, whatever you want to say, it is the only acquisition of the Mariners offseason, and that would be one Donovan Solano. Is Mariners infielder Donovan Solano freaking washed? Should they just cut bait now? Look elsewhere? Yes, absolutely. Let's get into it. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why he reminds me of a former Mariners offseason acquisition that they got rid of in the first month of the season, and look at the numbers, and he's actually worse than the player that I'm referring to. I mean, Donovan Solano, first off, as an option for the Mariners right now, with the current roster construction, I mean, you're literally putting a guy that's 5'8", at first base, and he's listed on major league rosters as 5'8". Do you really think, I mean, somebody go stand next to Donovan Solano. I'm sure that I could get a much better report on this from like Ryan Divish or Adam Jude or the guys on the Marine Layer podcast that are on the field or with the guys in the clubhouse a lot more often than I am. But man, I remember in like high school football, they listed me. I am barely like 5'9", 5'10", and they listed me at 6 foot in high school football. And I think they added like 20 to 30 pounds to every single player on the roster. That's just kind of how it goes on sports rosters, right? You want to look imposing on a paper. You want to make sure that your guys look big, look strong. And I don't know, 5'6" don't look so good. 5'8" looks all right. So is Solano even 5'8"? And we're not even talking about his hitting. We're going to get into that in just a second. But putting a guy in that is so short in a freaking Major League Baseball game, you just can't have it, okay? The Mariners already have enough to worry about. Their hitters, I mean, hey, they've been hitting a lot more home runs. They've actually been connecting with the ball a lot lately, something we haven't seen going back to last season, them do much, at least earlier in the season, until Edgar and Dan Wilson took things over. They're actually, hitting home runs. There are a lot of productive things that the Mariners are doing at the plate, but Donovan Solano is not one of them. We'll get into that in just a second. But on top of that, if you don't have a productive guy that was the only acquisition in the offseason for this team, I mean, he's already going to be under a much bigger microscope for the fans. And I know that I've been kind of eagerly awaiting to see anything from him. Well, we haven't. It's been a pretty underwhelming season, especially considering that consistent performance that was touted by the Mariners front office by Solano in recent years. I couldn't quite find the quote, but I either remember it was either Jerry or Dan or somebody referring to Donovan Solano in either an interview with like 710 or one of the local Seattle outlets that Donovan Solano is one of the most consistent hitters in the past 6 years in Major League Baseball. And frankly, they're correct. I mean, actually, you look at consistent numbers for him over just the last 4 seasons. He batted between 280 and 286 with an on-base percentage anywhere from 340 to 370. That's pretty good. That's understandably attractive to a team that needs to get guys on base and hasn't been hitting in clutch situations up until this point. But in 2025, Donovan Solano has been absolutely terrible for your Seattle Mariners. After going 0 for 4 against Cincinnati in the opening game of that series against the Reds, man, it looked bad in some of those at-bats too. I'll get into that in just a second, but his batting average sitting at 0.87 after that. His on-base plus slugging, OPS 174, hasn't had a single run batted in all season. All you have to do to get him out is throw a slider low and away. He'll swing at it. The one pitch that he got, he got the bat on 2 balls. One was basically a pop-up, but the second one that he got the bat on was like 4 inches outside of the strike zone, and he tried to hit it away. That's where he seems to be putting the bat on the ball. He's not swinging at it, or if he is, he's just swinging and missing at it in the zone, but he doesn't seem to like the ball right down the middle, because you saw him kind of look at a couple of those, kind of like Mitch Garver's doing, and then a slider low and away gets Donovan Solano out or gets him swinging every single time. If I were a pitcher, I'd just throw him sliders low and away every single time. He hasn't stopped chasing the entire season. And you look at his StatCast metrics, he obviously hasn't gotten his bat on the ball more than a few times this season, but his average exit velocity down from about 89 miles an hour in his career to 80 miles an hour. His hard hit percentage down to 26.7% this year after a career average of 37.4%. Once again, one of the more consistent hitters in Major League Baseball that we've supposedly seen. He's showing up and essing the bed. His bat barrel percentage, only 6.7%. His expected weighted on-base average, 167. And his expected batting average, 112. Solano making weaker contact and, of course, not really hitting the ball nearly as much, and that is leading to fewer hits. And at 37 years old, you wonder if it's the approach or if it's just a guy getting older. I mean, you saw Justin Turner come in. He looked great It's not necessarily age for every single guy, that's getting towards 40. And Donovan Solano's kind of a late bloomer in Major League Baseball. I don't think he really had much success until you look at his career about the age of 28 or 29, maybe 30. So I understand that, a guy like that who's not necessarily been in the game as long still could have a couple of valuable years left, even if he started his career, closer to 29 or 30. But hey, father time remains undefeated. And sometimes at 36, 37, 38, you just don't have it anymore. You see so many guys, hate to say it, hate to admit it, but it just kind of happens. And maybe that's what's happening now. Maybe he's declining. Maybe T-Mobile Park's making him uncomfortable. Who the hell knows what it is? But he's swinging at pitches he normally doesn't, and he's making weaker contact than he has ever in his career. And the Mariners, thankfully only signed him to a one-year deal, but that was literally, once again, I'll say it, their only off-season acquisition. And frankly, there was a lot of hope that he would help stabilize this offense. And yeah, that's not happening here in the first 2-3 weeks of the season. Once again, you can't play him at first. He's too short. So basically the platoon option for him there, in my opinion, is just a bad idea for Dan Wilson and Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander to try and execute. So what? You look at where else you could play him. It could be elsewhere around the infield. And this kind of starts to remind you, and there's actually a shuffling of guys around the infield. So now with Ben Williamson up, you might not actually have as many at-bats for a guy like Solano. And then it kind of raises the question, well, where do you put him? DH? And this is where I kind of start thinking about a former player that the Mariners acquired to do the very same thing. And I think you all know who I'm talking about in the 2023 offseason, or the offseason before 2023. Donovan Solano reminds me of the acquisition of Tommy La Stella by the Seattle Mariners. Tommy La Stella, also in his 30s, very brief tenure with Seattle in 2023, but in my opinion, it mirrors Donovan Solano's current struggles here in 2025. If you take a look at La Stella's performance during his stint with the Mariners, played in 12 games, had 21 at-bats, 4 hits, 2 runs scored, a double, no home runs and 2 RBIs. He had 3 walks and 5 strikeouts, only batted 190 and had an OPS of 530. His numbers are actually, when he was let go by the Mariners after just a couple of weeks into that season, or basically a month into 2023, he actually had better numbers than Donovan Solano at that point. And if you look at his advanced metrics, basically the same thing happened to him. His hard hit percentage went from a career average of 28% down to 12.5%. His barrel percentage was an average of near 4.5%. He got the barrel on the ball 0 times as a Seattle Mariner, and his expected on-base average was 244 as a Seattle Mariner compared to a 320 average the rest of his career. So essentially, his hard hit percentage went down, which means his average exit velocity went down in 2023. Same kind of thing as Donovan Solano, making weaker contact. And once again, not barreling any balls in that time with Seattle, a 2-3 week stint. Yeah, did not do that the rest of his career until he showed up. Was he declining? Maybe. But the Mariners, once again, in my opinion, now 2 years later, making the same mistake that they did with Tommy La Stella on Donovan Solano. They get a guy that they expect to come in, be somewhat of a consistent hitter, that he showed that he could be, undervalued hitter, at least in that season. Tommy La Stella, I bet he was talked to by nobody else. Maybe one team in the 2023 offseason, but the Mariners bringing in these undervalued guys, quote unquote, and depending on them to stabilize the offense, and then they get diminished offensive contributions from aging players. It's kind of sad how comparable this situation is. You look at them right next to each other. It's pretty funny. A comparative analysis of Tommy La Stella versus Donovan Solano. You got Donovan Solano obviously hitting 0.87 compared to Tommy La Stella's 190. But, his OPS was a little bit higher because he actually produced some runs for the Mariners. 2, to be exact. And he actually scored a couple of runs as well. Whereas Donovan Solano's only, $174. Solano essentially, if you all hated Tommy La Stella, Solano is essentially him times 100 as far as futility goes. And I think Tommy La Stella was like 34, maybe 35, compared to Donovan Solano at 37. I mean, yeah, you wonder about the age, but man, these guys that are supposed to come in, stabilize the offense, bring you veteran presence, just absolutely stinking it up. Albeit it is a small sample size, but the Mariners got rid of Tommy La Stella after 24 plate appearances, 21 at bats, just 12 games. Donovan Solano has not gotten close to what Tommy La Stella accomplished in that time as a Seattle Mariner. So, are you going to give more at bats to Donovan Solano? Are you going to waste these important opportunities early in the season? I don't know how seriously the Mariners are actually trying to win. They got rid of Mitch Haniger, already dead money. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they were willing to move on from Donovan Solano super quickly. Jerry Dipoto at least has shown that he is willing to admit, hey, like the Tommy La Stella decision, this isn't going to work. We need to move on to somebody else. I think that they need to get rid of Donovan Solano freaking yesterday. But that remains the question, or the question remains then, who would the Mariners replace Donovan Solano with? I mean, you look at like what he was doing so far up to this point. I don't want him to play first. You got Rowdy Tellez. Rowdy Tellez is sucking, all right? But I'd rather have somebody that actually can play a first base defensively, and somebody that's big, somebody that's tall, somebody that not only can scoop the low balls, but also jump and grab the high ones in case JP throws it over you a little bit. That's just what you need at a major league first base position. You can't put a 5'8" guy out there. And then when Ben Williamson came up, I mean, yeah, Solano could play third too, but essentially Ben Williamson coming up takes away any at bats that I think Donovan Solano was going to get at third, right? And then you look over, maybe I don't think I've seen Solano playing shortstop much, if not ever. Maybe he could play second. Well, once Jorge Polanco's healthy, he's most likely going to be playing second again with Ben Williamson back. So then after that, you've already given at bats to Leo Rivas. You've given at bats to Dylan Moore at second. So can Solano compete with them to get at bats at second? And then you're looking at DH. And by the way, it's asinine that the Mariners would have to consider putting Solano in at DH at all. He's not even hitting 100. It's one of the worst possible plans for a 1 through 9 lineup. I think Dan Wilson would rather do anything else. I think he'd rather go DH himself than put Donovan Solano in as the designated hitter at this point. But still, you're competing with, like, if Luke Raley's not in right field, then you're most likely putting him at designated hitter. Garver's getting designated hitter at bats when he's not backing up catcher. He's been awful, but these are the options that the Mariners have to work with, and I'd rather go with Mitch Garver. I'd rather put Dylan Moore in right field and push, Luke Raley to DH, or put Rowdy Tellez at designated hitter, put Dylan Moore at first base or something like that, than give Donovan Solano any more at bats. And once Jorge Polanco is healthy, once he returns to second base and those at bats at second are gone as well, literally the only place for Donovan Solano on the roster would be like first base or designated hitter. And you just can't roll him out as a regular DH, and you can't roll him out as a backup first baseman. So you got to move on. But who do you replace Solano with? I know people have been talking about JD Martinez being a possible option. He's on the free agent market still. Probably wouldn't be more than like $3-4 million at this point of the season. Was a competent hitter last year, had near 70 RBIs, I believe, with the Mets, just kind of sitting around waiting. But unfortunately, he is a designated hitter only, cannot play the field. And with the Mariners roster kind of already constructed nicely with the two utility guys in Dylan Moore and Miles Mastrobuoni, but unfortunately Moore kind of pushed into everyday duty either at second or in right field, or maybe to spell Ben Williamson at third base right now or something like that, or spell Arizarena in left field. You basically kind of have like Leo Rivas left over at second base, taking up some at bats. Maybe you could lean on him a little bit more. If you don't play Donovan Solano, you get rid of Donovan Solano, Leo Rivas gets every single opportunity instead of 80% of the opportunities. There's also some other in-house options beyond Rivas, like Austin Shenton down in Tacoma. He's had a decent year. People have been talking about Tyler Locklear. He's looked kind of competent so far at the plate, but that kind of locks you in at first base. At least for Locklear, it's literally another first baseman, a designated hitter. So it doesn't provide much more flexibility than like a JD Martinez does. So I look at options maybe with some flexibility. Like, I still don't understand why the Mariners aren't going with Samad Taylor on the major league roster. He can play the infield, he can play the outfield. He's actually got a really good swing, and he's so fast. And they removed him from the 40-man roster at some point, I believe, before spring training or in spring training. But Samad Taylor would be a great option, and I would rather see him getting at bats than Donovan Solano for the Seattle Mariners. Also, a nice sneaker option here, and this is one that I'm not sure many people are talking about. Rylan Thomas. He's the guy, 25-year-old outfielder that the Mariners got from the New York Mets in that Ryan Stanek trade, and he's actually hitting the ball pretty well, hitting 300 plus so far this year, has hit 300 in his minor league career. I mean, he's 25 years old. I'm not sure what else left he's got to work on in the minors. Why not give him a chance? A backup outfielder on the roster actually looks a lot better after you sent Dominic Canzone down, an option with some speed, an actual bat. Like, I would love to see the Mariners give a kid like Rylan Thomas an option. So I think those are a few names that you could lean on if the Mariners actually did move on from Donovan Solano. And goodness gracious, let's hope that they do. And let's hope that they do soon. They're already, like we said to start the episode of Bleav In Mariners, juggling the bullpen. Hopefully they get Matt Brash soon. It's nice to see Polanco hitting the cover off the ball, but hopefully he can play second base. And once that happens, there really is no spot for Donovan Solano on this team. And the Mariners need to try to get that winning formula together. And that winning formula involves not giving at bats to guys that are futile at the plate. Once you see it, you got to move on. They did it from Tommy La Stella. They need to move on. They need to do it. Get away from Donovan Solano and just cut bait. And that's going to do it for this episode of Bleav In Mariners. Appreciate everybody sticking around. Just saw that 0 for 4 performance to start the series against the Reds. And pretty much just was like, dude, I'm done. Like, they can't give at-bats to players like this anymore. There are options in-house. There are options on the free agent market that would be cheap, that would be a hell of a lot better. All right, hopefully I'm talking to you after another Mariners series win next time. And stick around. Of course, we're going to have a lot of great things coming up on Bleav In Mariners throughout the season. Hopefully we'll have a guest coming up here on the next episode. Got to talk to a couple of guys, been out to a couple people to get them on. Would love to discuss all this positivity that we're actually experiencing now as a Seattle Mariners fan in the last week with somebody else and bounce some ideas I have off of them, like getting rid of Donovan Solano. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Keep those tridents up, Mariners fans. See you soon.